Hello everyone, my name is Gyeyoon Yim, a doctoral candidate at Harvard School of Public Health, and today I will present the findings from my research that investigated the association between grandmaternal smoking during pregnancy and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in their grandchildren. So brief introduction to my research. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD, is, as you already heard from the previous section, is characterized by inattention, hyperactivity, cognitive impairment, and impulsivity. And as you can see from the graph, the prevalence of ADHD is on the rise. And given the early onset of this neurodevelopmental disorder, scientists have focused on the prenatal exposure to environmental toxicants such as smoking, because as you already know now, it has the ability to induce multi-generational DNA damage or germline mutation. And even though, although the prevalence of smoking has dramatically decreased for the last decade, still 10% of reproductive women in the US are smokers. Furthermore, probably due to the lack of data in humans, that includes like 3-generation information, only few studies to date have only investigated the multi-generational effect of tobacco smoking on the risk of neurodevelopmental disorders in the 3rd generation. So given this fact, we aimed to examine the association between grandmaternal smoking during pregnancy and ADHD risk in their grandchildren. So in this epidemiological study, we used the data from the Nurses' Health Study 2, which is one of the largest and ongoing prospective cohort study, which includes approximately 116,000 female registered nurses across the US who were born between 1946 and 1964. In our secondary analysis, we also used the data from the Nurses' Mothers Cohort study, which was launched as one of the sub-studies of Nurses' Health Study 2 in 2001, in order to further obtain the information about the nurses' early childhood and infancy. And exposure of interest was nurses' mothers smoking during pregnancy, which was obtained by their nurse daughters in the main study. But in our secondary analysis, we also used the data from the information obtained by the nurses' mothers themselves. And our outcome of interest was nurses' children's ADHD diagnosis, which was ascertained by nurse participants in the 2013 questionnaire in the Nurses' Health Study 2. In the given data structure, our primary issues included the possible correlation among the children within the same nurses, as well as informative cluster sites, which means the possibility that grandmaternal smoking might have affected the number of grandchildren within each nurse. So in order to address these issues simultaneously, we used the cluster-weighted generalized estimating equations with a larger length and weight, and also adjusting for these potential confounding factors. So the first table shows the basic characteristics of the Nurses' Health Study 2 participants and their mothers, and which included approximately 41,000 diets of nurses and their mothers. First of all, we found that approximately 25% of nurses' mothers smoked during pregnancy, and when it comes to the socioeconomic status, we found that the nurses' mothers who smoked during pregnancy, they were more likely to be higher educated, and they were more likely to have had managerial or professional jobs. Oh yeah, it was back in 1960s, and then back in 1960s or 50s, like the smoking behavior was considered like a fashionable behavior. I heard. And also, as expected, the nurses' mothers who smoked during pregnancy, they were more likely to have reported a lifetime history of depression. So in our main analysis, we made sure to adjust for these potential confounding factors. So our main analysis included approximately 92,000 children of the nurses participants. And we mainly examined the nurses, the association between the grandmaternal, the nurses' mothers, the grandmaternal smoking during pregnancy and the grandchildren's risk of ADHD. So first of all, as you can see from this table, approximately 23,000 children whose grandmothers smoked during pregnancy, they reported approximately 8.6% of ADHD diagnosis, whereas 61,000 children whose grandmothers did not smoke during pregnancy, only 7% of them reported ADHD diagnosis by their mothers. And then in both crude and adjusted analysis, we found a significant and positive association between grandmaternal smoking during pregnancy and ADHD risk in their grandchildren. In our secondary analysis, we also used the data from the nurses' mothers cohort study, and we examined if there is any association between the number of cigarettes smoked by grandmothers and the ADHD risk in their grandchildren. And as you can see from this table, we detected a dose-response relationship between the number of cigarettes smoked by grandmothers and ADHD risk in their grandchildren. So to summarize, we found that grandmaternal smoking in pregnancy was associated with an increased risk of ADHD among their grandchildren. In our secondary analysis, we also detected a dose-response relationship for the association between grandmaternal number of cigarettes smoked during pregnancy and ADHD in their grandchildren. And all the associations were robust to the further adjustment for the potential confounding factors. So in conclusion, we found that an increased ADHD risk in the third generation followed tobacco smoke during grandmaternal pregnancy. So the public health implications from these findings include, first, exposure to environmental factors during pregnancy could affect not only the development of the very next generation, but also the development of the third generation. Also, another public health implication also includes environmental toxicity effects on germline should now be evaluated from a regulatory perspective, which has not been done yet. So thank you so much for listening my presentation, and I also would like to extend my thank you to my advisor and my colleagues, and then EMGS, who gave me the opportunity to share the findings. Thank you.
Any questions?
The sex effects question again?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I saw anything. Looking at the male and female F2s separately?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. You didn't miss anything. Okay. Basically, in the main analysis, we were also interested in the possible effect of modification by G2 sex. So we included interaction term between grandmaternal smoking during pregnancy and the grandchild sex. And first of all, the interaction term was not significant, but also just in case, we also conducted a separate analysis by the grandchild sex. And I believe, I have to check one more time, but there was slight difference, but ultimately their confidence interval overlaps, so we included there is no significant sex difference by,
Forgive me, a non-scientist, so forgive the ignorance. Is there any way to know whether it was the nicotine or something else in the cigarettes? I'm just kind of compare this to the last talk. And obviously e-cigarettes are a huge political issue right now, so it would be great to have insight into what's causing the generational effects on ADHD.
You mean what should be the cause of?
Well, is there any way to know from your study whether the causal agent was the nicotine in the cigarettes, given that the previous study was just pure nicotine, but yours was tobacco smoke? Is there any way to know whether it was the nicotine?
No.
Unfortunately, yeah.
The answer is no. I already know the answer.
Yeah, thank you for the interesting question. Unfortunately, in the nurses' health study data, even though we collected a variety of variables from the nurse professionals, but I don't think. For example, I wish we had some information about the cotinine levels in the serum, by Grandmaternal. But of course, I think that's one of the limitations in our study, that we only relied on the information that collected by the grandmothers and mothers through self-asked questions.